sport, there may be physical slots that the coach pretty much can use on certain athletes each year. Of course, they're going to be working with the admission office, because the last thing that we want to do is bring any student who's going to come to our school and ultimately struggle. So the coach is already working with the admission office in helping to build their team. Do they need to use a slot on this student, or do they think perhaps if they take a look at your transcript and your test scores, maybe you'll actually have a likelihood of getting into the school on your own, and so maybe they don't need to use a slot specifically on you. So because the coach is doing this all at once, they're the one who has the best sense of who they're graduating that year and who they're going to be looking for in the next year's class. It's also going to, and if it's a school that doesn't have slots, you may still get a little bit of a benefit by talking to the coach, because the coach may still be able to take a look at your transcript and test scores and reach out to the admission office and get a sense of what you might be like in the applicant pool. Just a little bit of a heads up. Now, of course, at a school like Colgate, we do have Division I sports, absolutely, but we have a holistic application review process. So usually that doesn't tell the full story at all. So be mindful of that as well, too. How do you?
You heard a lot there, a lot of talk about athletics too. The big thing is coaches, and what you heard is coaches want to recruit athletes who are going to be successful in the classroom. One of the things that will probably come up in the process is coaches have limited amounts of money in some cases. Others, they have a lot of money. Some sports, you give someone a certain amount of money, that's counting the same as if you give them a full scholarship. But if the coaches can extend their money because the student gets academic scholarships, that's a way they can extend their budget. And so just keep that in mind. But once again, some of these conversations start very early on, and the whole thing, especially in Maryland, in this area, a lot of that doesn't even take place in the high schools, because you've got other people out there. Never pay for people to do that for you. Always work with your counselors and listen, and so they understand that side of it. But the other part that I would add, beyond students that are hooked, it's not always just the athletes. It is also, we have a tremendous visual and performing arts program. And so we're a school that's very well known for our STEM programs. But sometimes the greatest dancers in the world, and you have a tremendous dance studio here at Garrison, seen some of the great work, some of the things that your girls have done here. Maybe they just, that math score isn't what we would expect for someone going into biology. But that doesn't mean they can't come to UMBC and still be successful. Now, they're still going to have to take other classes, and we want to make sure they can do that. But maybe we can be, you heard the word holistic, when we take that holistic review, that dance ability, that theater ability can account for maybe what might be a lower score in another area. So don't always think it's just athletes. There was a state school in New York that one of the things they did was they said their mission was to serve the local community. And one of the things they did was when they kind of looked at students, if you were within a certain radius of the schools, they're like, we may not need these standardized test scores. And it was a way for them to look a little better on paper, but they justified their special population as students in a surrounding community. So you never know what that hooked population might be. It could be the athlete. I think that's the one that always jumps to mind. But it can also be an artist. It can be a nearby students. Some schools have different policies with students with documented disabilities and how that may be processed in the review. So all good questions to ask the counselors again and to follow up and to learn more.
Thank you so much. Okay, at this point, I would love to turn it over to the students. So any student questions, raise your hand, and we are happy to field them. Yes, Mia.
Do your schools offer any service opportunities? And if you do, are they national, international, or just like for the community around your school?
So let me repeat the question. Do your schools offer service opportunities? Are they local, national, just in the school or in the community?
All of it.
All of
yes. It? Ditto.
Yes. 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 So all of the schools will offer service opportunities. Service is a huge thing nowadays for students. It's huge on every campus, and on every campus you will have ample opportunity to get involved in many, many, many service opportunities. So excellent question. Thank you so much. Yes.
Do your schools offer like connections for hospitals or research programs for undergraduates?
question is about research programs for undergraduate students and connections with hospitals.
Yes, all of it. Now, I guess what we can do afterwards too is talk a little bit off the side if there's something that you're particularly interested in as well, because depending on our locations and our relationships with specific hospitals, it is going to vary, but yes.
And so I think both of your questions are really terrific questions,
are.
and the reality is that there are most colleges and universities, places like ours that are broad in their academic, social, and residential offerings are going to have a menu of things to choose from. But I think as you explore, and the Ames College Fair is one opportunity to do that, the 100+ colleges and universities that will visit Garrison Forest next fall is another opportunity to do that. But to help sort of draw the line between what your interests are and sort of why those interests exist. So, like, help us understand what kind of service opportunities would be most meaningful to you. Why are you interested in doing research at a hospital? And then we can do the work on our end, or our colleagues at the different colleges and universities that you're considering, all of you are considering, to figure out sort of how to draw that line and connect you with the right folks. Because, you know, so many times, like, I've been at the Ames College Fair, like, a lot of times.
A lot.
And there's like a lot of people there, and they come in sort of, I would say, like, various states of, like, disheveled, but all trying to look very put together. Like, really, I mean, more put together than a lot of places. Like, the people in Los Angeles have given up. And so that's a place to sort of begin a conversation, and sort of where you can leave that sort of helping to sort of start a conversation with yourself about sort of why do I want, I'm interested in knowing more about their English department, but every college here has an English major pretty much. Like, what do I want to know about an English major? Like, why do I want to be an English major? Like, why did I ask that question? And that will sort of arm you for Camp College in the summer and the fall, so that you can better articulate sort of what you want to talk to us about, because we'll be excited to do that, for sure.
And Peter, actually, it's funny, he was talking about a fair when he was asking that question. What I liked about these two questions is it goes back to what I was talking about earlier and saying, what are your values? So, you know, you're looking at a school right now that service is going to be important, and you want to have opportunities for research. And I think what Peter is saying is take it to the next level. And what does that really mean? I'm at a college fair too, and when you've done this a long time like we have, people come up to college fair and someone will come up and be like, is your psychology program good? And I'll be like, no, it sucks.
I don't mind you, girls.
We had that conversation today in decision
Oh, you did
class. Exactly.
And that's a lot of, and you're dumbfounded because you are never going to ask a college, do they have a program? And they're going to say, no, it's horrible. At the best, they might say, no, we don't offer this major, but you might have this, this, and this. So how is it that you take it to the next level to understand? And so some of the things that I will encourage students to do in the process is find another student that went to Garrison, that went to that school, or went to another independent school that is now at that state university, or is at that private college, and what was their experience like? If you're an underrepresented student, one of the things we talk about UMBC so much, because a lot of times too, especially when it comes to issues of race, people are very uncomfortable having those conversations, especially when I'm a white male and you might be underrepresented. But what is it like to be an underrepresented student going into the sciences? Because the numbers can be very different at the undergraduate level. And it's not just, hey, I want to be a biology major. How many of your minority students that start off in science graduate in science? That's the depth and the thinking that you want to have about some of your questions. A lot of times people will say, yeah, well, I wanted to be a STEM major, but then I ended up being a lawyer. No, you had a tough time in biology 101, right? That's what happened. So the point that I'm trying to make is, and I think what we're all saying is, it's going to be a lot of quick interactions. You really want to delve into things and make them very personal and relatable for you, whatever that you is.
Thank you. And that's what we were talking about with the students earlier this year, is it's really about thinking about themselves first. Before you look at the, 1,000 schools that are out there, it's really about what do you want, what do you value. I value service. I value research. I value what is it that you value, because they have it. It's just figuring out what you want in the process. Okay. Yes.
So, just a more general question, like not to specific college or still universities, but when you review an application, will there be a difference between someone who's applying to a specific major when undecided, right? Is that right? And also, would there be a difference if someone's applying to a single major or a double major? So would
That's
there be?
Mine? Is it on?
You just have to project it to get that.
Oh, okay. So the question is there a difference of applying to a specific major at your school as compared to others? Is one more challenging than another, more selective than another to get in? That's a great question. And what about a single major versus a double major? How does that play out in the admission process? So I do know that there are differences with different majors. So if you guys can talk amongst yourselves and talk about that, because there definitely are differences.
Yeah.
So I'll start. So I'll start as the liberal arts school. It's going to depend on you're going to hear a lot from our admission officers that you're working with, that a lot of the answers that we're going to give you is it depends. But at Colgate, I want to say about half of our students come in completely undecided, and then the other half completely change their minds. So no, we want to know more than anything else what your academic record is like, you as a person, what impact you've made here at GFS. And so it actually does not matter to us. We'll often see what you're interested in just because we're going to probably see that throughout your application, but does that have a bearing on the final decision? No. But when you're applying to Colgate, because we are a liberal arts school, you're applying to Colgate, not to a specific college within it, which is different.
And at Syracuse, there are 9 different colleges, and not the major that you select in most cases outside of 5 of our 200 majors we admit directly to the major, but the college that you select completely drives our thinking in the admission decision-making process. So our colleges' admit rates range from 8% to 60%, but about half of our colleges have admit rates of 30% or less, and the other half are under 60%. So it can, it really influences the decision whether or not you select engineering or business or communications or the arts or wherever you land. We're looking at different things, and the way that our process is driven is we have specific enrollment targets in each of those colleges. And so my former life, I was at a liberal arts college, and we needed 565 kids. And they could, we didn't think they were all going to major in Russian, but they could, if they could tell us that when they applied, and we wouldn't care, and they wouldn't either. But I think a lot of kids sometimes apply to major in Russian because they think they'll get in, and maybe that's true, but maybe not now. But your question is a good one, because at some places it really won't make any difference at all, and at some other places like mine, it'll make all the difference in the world.
Thank you. Questions?
The early decision, is there a date that you have to say that you accepted early decision, or you automatically accepted it when you apply early decision?
Sure, that's a great question. So the question is, for early decision, is there a date by which you have to accept the offer of admission once it's rendered?
Yeah, for us, and I think most places that have early decision, it's within a month typically. So if you're admitted, for us, the deadline is February 1st. So students who are admitted early decision that we don't hear from by early February, we're going to start to track them down and figure out what's going on.
And when we say hear from, what most schools mean is that we're going to be looking for a deposit. Usually there's an enrollment agreement that you are signing, again, that you are coming and you're verifying that, and then you're also sending a certain amount of money depending on the school, securing your spot.
Yes.
If something happens and you apply early decision universities and people can't go to that school, what can you do?
That's a great question. So if you apply early decision to a school and something happens and you can't go to that school, what happens?
it's a conversation, and there are students every year who we release from the early decision commitment. In the situations we try to avoid are financial. In the disadvantage in applying early decision is that you aren't able to compare financial aid packages. However, our financial aid offer is not any different in early than it would be in regular decision. And so I think when we're talking most often to people who apply early and then they're saying, oh, it's not going to work because of the money, we say, well, let's talk about this, and we can often come to a place where we can try and make it work, because nobody wants to back out of that commitment if they don't have to. But other times there are family or other circumstances that make the enrollment decision a bad one. And we're not going to want to jeopardize somebody's success because their circumstances have changed. And so we would work with a student and their school to release them from that early decision commitment, understanding that is it ideal? No, but we're people too, and want to make sure that everybody is we want to have a conversation and have everybody around the same table so we're all on the same page.
And I will say, putting on my admissions practices hat, the two complaints that I investigate the most are schools that try to make students commit prior to May 1st, or they have different decision plans. So we're talking right now early decision 1, but there's early decision 2. As you heard Peter say, colleges come up with their own language sometimes and their own terms. It can get really messy. There is some schools now, and Anne Marie, you can help me, Ms. Strauss, you can fill it in here, where there are some schools in New York, for example, you can apply early decision, but not to the competitor schools, but other state universities, because that might be their head-to-head competition, but they know that you might live in the state, and long-term you need to have other options in case your ED doesn't work out there. So every school has put their spin on this, and it gets really complicated. Schools are trying to get the best and the brightest, and you're trying to make a decision that's best for you. Ultimately, as you heard Peter say, we want it to land in the middle to where it works out for all involved. But whenever you're just feeling a little, what was your word, yuck? What was it again?
Don't yuck my yum.
Don't yuck your yum. If you're feeling that about the process you're planning, that's where you really need to rely on your counselors to say, this just isn't feeling right. And they can help guide you and lead you. Because they also have, the flip side of it is, you not only represent yourself in the early decision process, you represent all the other Garrison girls moving forth in that process. Because if you back out, then they say, is that next Garrison girl going to back out? And I know with the quality counseling staff you have, their name is very important to them in the field too.
Thank you. Yes.
And
Exactly.
let me just say too, you have to trust yourself in this process. That's part of what is fun about doing all of the college visits, meeting the admission officers. So by the time you are making the big decision about, do I apply early decision, am I prepared to make that commitment, you do feel like it is a good fit for you. And in regards to financial aid, know that every single college in the US has to put what's called a net price calculator on their website. So if financial aid is something that you and your family are talking about now, that is going to play a big role in where you go to college, make a point to do the math and do the work ahead of time to figure out what your financial aid package might actually be like. And so by the time that you are signing this agreement and you get your acceptance letter, you're excited about it. This is a long process though.
This would be really targeted more towards UMBC. Can you talk a little bit about in-state versus out-of-state candidates, and are there quotas, or
It's interesting. So,
Let me repeat the
as I say,
question.
you want to repeat the
So
question?
the question was, for our state institution, can you talk about in-state versus out-of-state admissions, and are there quotas for in-state and out-of-state students?
So, and I will talk specifically for UMBC in the state of Maryland. Within the state of Maryland, there is a percentage of students for College Park, UMBC, Towson, that says we need to admit a certain number of students that are in-state. Truth be told, it's either 60% or 70%. We've not bumped up against that number, so we don't worry about it. You also see it in Virginia and some of those schools. So in some cases, yes, it could be. We do not, though, have different standards if you're a Maryland resident or a Virginia resident. We are blind in that process. Now, once again, that can vary from other state institutions to other state institutions, because there are some that there are, you know, Delaware has their programs that allow students different entry into that program. The other part about people often say too, well, I don't live in Maryland, or I'm going to try to get, especially at a boarding school, that they want to, you're qualifying for residency is the next question that comes up. Well, the reason that state institutions, the tuition is lower is because we are supported by taxpayer dollars. Okay, now it used to be we were I wish I could take claim for this, we were state supported, then state assisted, now we're state located, because that's how much money we get from tuition now. So in many cases we act much more like a liberal arts school with our funding coming from tuition. But the reason that tuition is lower at a state institution is because taxpayer dollars subsidize that cost. So that's why you have to establish residency for a year, because when you pay your taxes, you are supporting UMBC, Towson, College Park, and the other schools. So it's not like I'm going to use my aunt's address or my other parent's address and I'm going to get state. There's a lot of, one of the things that I am audited on the most is making sure that people that are in-state residents are truly in-state, and that's tax documents, driver's license, voter registration. There's a number of things, and I guarantee you that's the first thing every year that we're audited on. So there's another layer to your question there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hi,
yes.
I have a couple questions that are kind of related. So do your schools kind of have thresholds that, like, when you get the applications, if you don't have X and Y, we don't even look any further because you don't have our GPA or test scores? And if you don't do that, is there something that you can recommend that would really make a student stand out? And does coming from Garrison, because you know the school, help? That you know their curriculum?
Right, so the question is there sort of a line in the sand where you know, a student isn't even going to be read, right? The file is just too low, the GPA, the SAT scores are just too low, that's below the threshold, deny. Or does every file get read and then denied, or admitted, or what else helps a student stand out in the process, and what's up with the Garrison Forest value, and how, because you know us and you know the curriculum, what does that do for us, basically, right?
You did good.
Awesome.
I'll take a piece of that. So when we're reading applications, it is all of us, the admission officers, reading the applications. We do not have a computer really touch any part of the decision making, because we're not actively looking to deny students. We are looking to build a class, so it is in our best interest to go into every single applicant's file and find out a little bit about them. And so absolutely, we dive into every single transcript, because we might not know if someone had a severe concussion. Do I even ask how many sports injuries students have had here and how much school was missed? There's those kinds of things often allow us to get to know the story behind the transcript. Most students are not just their academic record. It is absolutely the most important part of your application, and I don't think that's shocking to anyone. No? No? Oh, come on. That's, no, not even a smile. Yes, your academics are the most important part, but we are going into every single file. I know at Colgate it's at least 3 people are looking at every single applicant's file.
And so someone asks me, and I'm sure all of us, every time I go somewhere, like, how do you stand out? And my message is, standing out is not always, like, very good. Usually, for me, it's bad. But the students, I think, who do set themselves apart from sort of day one with us are the ones who are the most thoughtful, the most honest, the most authentic, who approach this like as a person-to-person interaction, and don't limit it to a process. And so to me, like, the kids that I get excited about are the ones who are kind of ready to be themselves when they apply to college, and don't try to manufacture a brand for their application to present to us that is really not who they're going to show up and be when they arrive somewhere in August. And so to get at the Garrison thing, Corianne used a word earlier to describe our approach that she sort of talked about how multiple people read an application. We look at everything as holistic, and you hear this word a lot. And I'm like ready for a new word. Like when I hear holistic, I am in like the Wegmans like quinoa aisle very quickly. And but what holistic for us means that we do consider every aspect of the applicant, because we're trying to build a class. And one critical component of that is the context in which they were prepared. And Garrison Forest has a strong track record of preparing students really well for college. That doesn't mean better than XYZ place, because we read Garrison Forest applicants in the context of Garrison Forest in Syracuse, not in the context of McDonough or Bryn Mawr or Friends. And so, but is it, are you in a good place? Yeah. Like, and I think you can see that, 25 people coming to read essays in June, like that's love. Like nobody wants to read a freaking essay in June. I don't want to read them now. And I'm going back to the hotel to read essays. But like, so you're in a good place.
And I'm going to add one thing, and sometimes when you say this, you have to be very cautious about this. When you say it in an independent school, and once again, I'm very involved with my daughters at RPCS on the board there, and I've said it to them too. And I actually would love to take credit for the line, but it was from a colleague of mine who used to be the director of college counseling at Norfolk Academy in Norfolk, Virginia. And the thing is, and you heard me mention earlier, your girls here are at Garrison. Some have been here for 13 years, some years before. I actually hope you did not send your girls here to Garrison to get into college. And that's when sometimes like you can get in trouble. People are like, no, that's why I sent them there. I know when I made the decision to send my girls to RPCS for an all-girls education, it was about the type of person they would become, the citizen of the world, how they looked at things, the voice they received. College is a residual of all of that. It's not the specific outcome on a transcript or a standardized test score or getting into XYZ college. It is the woman they have been here in the 4 years. And so we'll get rid of the word holistic. I like that. But it is their experiences here that when they're applying to school says, wow, this is a place where doors can be open and we can grow and cultivate that seed that has been planted from here. And like I said, sometimes people don't like to hear that. It's like, no, I would send my kid there to Garrison to get into college. I think you want your daughters, and for girls, you want to be happy, you want to live rich and fulfilling lives. Those are my values, so maybe I'm imposing them on you, and that's not my intent. But once again, college admissions is a residual of everything else that has happened over the past number of years here.
Last question, Amy, because you've asked one. Have you asked one yet? Okay, you've got the last question of the night.
Can we get, like for the essays and for the applications, are there any topics that you would advise applicants to stay away from, or any that?
The common app question, where's your favorite space? The toilet. Did you get that
Or the
question?
shower.
Dale, repeat the question.
Is there a question you never want to ask again? I will tell you.
Is there something for the essay, what are topics that one should avoid? Are there any topics that one should avoid? Yes, there are.
Yes, sorry. So that a couple years ago, one of the
Thank
common
you
app
for asking
general
that.
questions was, where's your favorite spot in the house? How was it worded? And
I don't remember. It was like, yeah, where
where do you like to think?
Where's your place? Like, where's your place?
And we read more about toilets that year than we could possibly imagine, and we would never want to read one more thing about that. So that's my quick answer to the question. But
And people thought they were being funny. And so I will say be very careful about jokes, because I love jokes. I've tried and have not always read the audience right in my jokes tonight. And similarly, I don't always get the jokes that students are putting in their essays. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to email you about it. I'm not going to email you and say, this third line, is it funny? I think it's funny, but it might be sarcastic, or it might be dead serious, and maybe it's just, I don't know what to make of it.
Maybe it's just weird.
Maybe it's just weird. So know that if you think, absolutely, I'm going to get the joke, and you hear from your English and history teachers that you're really funny in your writing too. You've heard that this is not going to be the first time that you've written really funny things, And so I will get the joke, and also my dean will get the joke, and so will 8 other people in our committee room, and then to the 8 other schools that you're applying to, if you're sure everyone's going to get the joke, please, please, please put it in your essay. But if it's 50-50, I don't know, maybe leave it out.
Since it's the last question, I will break the 2 response rule.
Yeah, I'm gonna add it to mine too.
So and so there are so college essays are an opportunity, one of very few opportunities on the application where you can tell us things that aren't on your transcript, that aren't part of the application themselves. That it's an opportunity for us to dive a little deeper and get to know you better. And to get at your question, which is, are there things sometimes you shouldn't write about? That can be the case, but that doesn't. But oftentimes there are things about you that are such essential parts of your story that we need to know about. And the essay may or may not be the right place to talk about it. That may come in through your college counselor's recommendation. There's an additional information section that you should be judicious about how you approach, but it's there. I guess what is like, so oftentimes for us, it's like death, divorce, disease, or we said like the big 3 that happen to start with the letter D, that like if your life has been affected by sort of unexpected or tragic circumstances, and that's an important part of your story, the essay may or may not be the place to tell it. And so I think there are things to avoid. We won't get into that. Garrison Forest, I read like a lot of football essays that I'm just like, I'm over them. But that's like my own problem, and I have to get over that. So there's not necessarily topics, but there's approaches that you should be thoughtful about. And you're gonna have the chance to do that here.
And so my answer is not 100% flippant and just talking about toilet.
Or shower. We got a lot of shower. Like, I don't want anybody
Closet,
in the bathroom.
bedroom closet is another one. Your walk-in closet.
Just don't answer that one, really.
An advice that someone gave, that I heard someone say once, that I think is great, is if you gave that essay to your best friend, would they know it's you? And I think that's a great summary, and I will wrap up with this story, because that's what we really are, all are victims of our own story, creatures of our own story, or outcomes of our story. And I was telling once again, as parents, we like to brag about our kids, as you all know. And this summer, my daughter was at a travel soccer game, and the head coach was not going to be there that day. The assistant coach was running late. And she came in, got their team getting ready to warm up, 30 minutes before the game. The coach's daughter was there. She had the ball bag, line up, so they're getting ready. My daughter ended up lining up all her teammates, took them through warm-ups, did all the drills, found an old lineup in there, called captains for the game to go out. Literally, the game's getting ready to start. The referee's like, you need to have a coach on the sideline, because the other coach got stuck in traffic is what it was. So I'm not trying to make him to be a bad coach. He's a great guy. Went over, she ran over, and she got a parent from the sideline and said, hey, can you stand on the sideline till our coach gets here? And in a nutshell, that is my daughter. Because she's going to need a test optional school. I can tell you right now, right? This is a 7th grader. But she is an organizer. She's a leader. And when she did it, she thought about, look, I'm not going to make myself captain today. And I'm not going to start myself so people think it's about me. That story told you she was. And I was telling that story to a counselor in the profession, and someone said, that's her college essay. And I'm like, that's a story that you can't necessarily, and I'm not saying that, yes, I am saying it to brag about my daughter, but I'm not saying, but that tells a story that you're not going to see in any other way that says who she is. Because like I said, I'm not sure how that transcript and standardized test scores are going to be.
And I will piggyback on that story, because I would say, yes, that as a college counselors, when we hear stories like that, we're like, that's your essay. That's your essay. That's your essay and then some. So she's in 7th grade. So this is often what happens. You write about something that happened in 7th grade. You're in 12th grade when you apply to college. What has happened since 7th grade? That is the anecdote. That is the beginning of the essay. The college counseling piece, the piece we're going to help you with, if it's not already there, and sometimes it comes to us already there, but if it's not already there, I'm going to say, is it Riley? Riley. I'm like, Riley, okay, so this happened to you in 7th grade. You're a senior. What else has happened to you? What is this quality? You're a leader. You're an organizer. What else are you a leader and an organizer in high school? Oh, right, yeah, I'm in the bee club. Oh my gosh, and I organized, yeah, we did this honey drive, and we made our own honey, and we sold it, and yes, yes, yes. okay, so you start out with 7th grade Riley, and then you bring it up to 12th grade Riley, and then you say, and then it becomes full circle, and it's like, that, my friends, is an essay.
And if you're having trouble brainstorming ideas, the best piece of advice that I can give you is that the essay is one of the last things that I look at when I'm reading your application. I've already gotten a sense of your family background. I've gotten a sense of what activities you're involved in school, out of school, and I've already taken a look at your academics. I've seen what your recommendations are like, and so by the time that I get to your essay, it's one of the last things that I read. And so, what is something that you think we might not see anywhere else in your application that you feel is really important to you? Peter touched on that before, but I think you can really start brainstorming with that question.
Absolutely. So we promised that that would be the last question of the evening, so I just want to give a huge round of applause to our guests. And also, thank you so much for staying. It's a little past 9 and I apologize, but thank you for coming, thank you for staying, and have a great night. We look forward to working with you.